p.m. And we do have a quorum, and I just want to say, great to see you all. It's only been 14 months, so, and for new folks, great to see you all as well. But here we are back in our plexiglass environment, which is kind of funky, and when you talk, it's an echo chamber, right? So we'll have a pledge of allegiance, and Tom will lead us in that.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, John, any adjustments to the agenda?
I have one small one, which is under business items H, to undertake a first reading of...
Wait a minute. So, Jeff, if you can hear me, so Carol is not getting her loop at the moment yet? Thanks for raising your hand. Now? No?
Yeah, just...
Can you hear now? Can you hear me talking now, Carol? So that box is turned on and everything, Carol, like normal? Not sure?
It says it's on and it says it's up, but...
Sorry about this.
Get a chance, you guys introduce yourselves later, okay?
I will be working on it. Hopefully it'll come to you.
So go ahead and resume. All right.
Under business item H, to undertake a first reading of item 3, RSU 13 Draft Policy DJ-R Administrative Procedure Federal Procurement Manual can be removed.
Okay, thank you. Number 4, public participation. Citizens are welcome to speak to agenda matters before the board. Anybody who would like to speak? Yes.
Does this mean that we can't speak about items that are not on your agenda?
If you want to speak, you want to come up here to the podium, and if you want to bring something up to the school board, you may do that.
Name and town.
Okay, these items are not on your agenda. I'm Maria Devery, and I'm from the town of Owl's Head.
Okay.
Mrs. Thomas is our representative. I have multiple concerns. One is we have heard that the board is going to reinstitute face masks for our children. And I know that there are many parents that are concerned about that. Could you confirm or deny whether that's going to be the case?
I think you'll be speaking about that later.
I will cover it in my report.
So superintendent will cover it in his report a bit later on.
Okay, so that's 6A? Item 6A
yes.
on your agenda?
Yes, yes. So what it says.
Okay. The second item that I'm very concerned about, and I have spoken to Mrs. Thomas about this, and I've also spoken to the curriculum director, Stephanie, back in the spring. We had quite a lengthy phone conversation. She was very gracious in pointing out how or where within the RSU13.org website I could find the information that I was interested in, and I have drilled down and looked at a lot of this stuff. I'm very concerned about the introduction of critical race theory into the curriculum at the high school, middle school, and further dripped into the elementary school. I've looked at these materials. Many of my neighbors and friends are aware of these materials, the resources that Stephanie, you so graciously pointed me to, although you didn't directly answer my question about whether or not this curriculum was going to be incorporated into RSU 13. You never answered the question. You just directed me to teacher resources, and I've looked at them, and they're quite shocking. So my question is, I'd like a direct answer, a yes or no. Is this curriculum going to be introduced and taught to our students?
You want to address that?
I can address that,
Well,
too.
first of all, I don't know the curriculum that you're referring to, but I will say that critical
Would you like
race,
this?
critical race
Right
theory.
here.
You gonna let me answer the question?
Yes, go ahead.
No. How's that?
Okay, then we will hold you to that, sir. We will make sure that our students keep us well informed about what is being taught at the high school and the middle school and the elementary schools. Because this stuff is pretty shocking. We don't want our children to be taught that they're oppressors. And our children of, our black, brown, and children of color are victims, because that's what all of this teaches. Okay, those are my questions. So we'll wait for your report, 6A.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything else? Okay. Seeing none. Approval of the minutes, meetings of June 3rd and June 17th. If there are no objections, the minutes will be written. Wait a second. Yeah, into consent. And, yeah, approved as written. And we'll move on to reports. So, report of the superintendent.
Oh, hey, thank you very much. First thing I'd like to do is welcome everybody back. Nice to be back in business. It's nice to be back in person. I did take a little rest. After quite a long period, I took a couple of weeks and I went out to camp and shut the cell phone off. That was nice. I'd also like to welcome Rockland School Board Representative David Martz to our board, and Thomaston Representative Kiara Moore-Weissing. Did I pronounce that close to being correct?
More Vissing.
More Vissing, okay. All right, thank you. Welcome to the board. The next thank you goes out to our teaching staff and Assistant Superintendent Stephanie Tribo for the wonderful summer program that we had basically pretty much the whole month of July, which was experiential summer camp. I got many, many reports, and Stephanie will talk about it more later, about how wonderful the camp was for both teachers and staff, extremely engaging and fun, and you'll hear much more about that later. We already had a question about opening for fall, and what I will say is that the Health and Safety Protocols Committee is meeting. We've had one meeting to review the CDC guidelines and proposed draft for health and safety protocols for the fall. As you know, the CDC has come out with new recommendations for schools in terms of masking when counties go to significant spread, particularly now in light of the Delta variant that's come out. We're looking at that. We have 2 more meetings, and most likely by the board workshop, which is 2 weeks from now, I'll have what we've come up with. So I don't have a definitive answer for you on that one tonight. What I will say, though, is this year we are very much looking forward to having full-time, in-person instruction without cohorts, without a modified schedule, and that's going to be great. It's going to be great to get back to business more or less as usual, so that's exciting. And as always, this year, I look forward to fulfilling our mission of teaching about relationships, proficiencies, and pathways in the Schools of Our Future 2.0. We've undertaken an exciting adventure. We've had a lot of success with our schools, and I look forward to serving you for another school year with that mission in my heart. And that concludes my report.
Okay. Any questions for John? All right. Seeing none, then report of the Assistant Superintendent.
All right. My report is only going to focus on one topic. Usually it's, 3 or 4, but this time's just one. It's summer programming, and I feel so energized coming from the work of the teachers and the students over the summer. It just was incredible what they were able to put together. So really excited. There's going to be more of an in-depth look when we have our curriculum committee meeting, and I'll have great pictures. And Sarah Rogers, who's our 21st Century Grant Coordinator, who runs the South School programming, which was a full-day program, and the middle school programming, which was at the Flanagan Center, and high school programming, which this year was a training to be a mentor and almost like a camp counselor at the South School program. She'll talk more about that in detail and give a presentation. So if you want an even more detailed look and not just to look at the data, certainly you're welcome to join us. It will be via Zoom, the curriculum board meeting. So this is an overview of some of the data from summer programming that I just want to share with you. So I'm going to pop it up on the screen. All of you have it in front of you as well. Just give me 1 second to steal the screen. So we had 12 programs this summer. I'm only going to focus on 5 of them. I don't know if I can make this any bigger on the screen. It's not wanting me to zoom in here. Oh, there we go. So most of these are in addition to our normal summer programming. We typically run ESY summer programming for special education, so we ran all of those programs as usual. We ran our high school credit recovery programming as usual, so this data doesn't capture that. This data captures the elementary summer programs at Ash Point Community School, Cushing Community School, South School, Thomaston Grammar School, and our Oceanside Middle School Flanagan Center program. We served 195 students with the summer programming, and of those 195 students, 141 students participated full-time for 4 consecutive weeks, so that's 16 full days of programming. So those were pretty exciting numbers. I do have the breakdown there by school and program as well, just so that you can see how many participated by school. Some of our programs, like Cushing is a good example, and actually TGS is a really good example as well. You'll see the total number of students varies pretty drastically from the number of students that participated in the full program. That is not because any of the students were dropping out of the program. That's because some families selected only to come for maybe a week of the program or 2 weeks of the program just due to their vacation schedules. So for data, we did poll our families and we asked that they include their kids in providing this feedback as well. We wanted to know how would you gauge enthusiasm for attending, and we found that 1% of our students found that it was a struggle to get their child to attend each day, or families found it was a struggle to get their child to attend each day. 18% said their child was agreeable to attending each day, and 81% said my child was excited and eager to attend each day. So great data to see how enthusiastic our students were, and even just being agreeable to get up and go in the summer. That was exciting to me. That's a big 99% of blue that we're seeing there. We received survey feedback data from 75 of our families. We asked them what the top reasons were for signing up initially for programming, and they gave us 3 top reasons. Number 1, and this one was number 1 above all other reasons, was to have continued learning experiences through the summer. Number 2 was to build relationships with peers, and number 3 was to engage in hands-on learning. We asked families, and include their students in this, to what extent did they agree or disagree with these statements. So do you agree or disagree that there were opportunities to make friends? Again, seeing all that blue there, that's 100% of our responses were agreeing that there were opportunities for them to make friends. One thing I want to point out about that is we were not tightly cohorted like we had to be in school. We had mixed grade level groups, so there were opportunities where 3rd graders might be working with 5th graders that maybe they'd never had a chance to meet before, or kindergarten students with 1st graders, and making some bonds there and some friendships there that they may not have otherwise had the opportunity to make, and certainly did not have the opportunity to do that last year. There were opportunities to build relationships with, and it's cut off there, that should say teachers. We had 5% were not sure, 1% disagreed, 41% agreed, and 53% strongly agreed. And, a lot of these are cut off on my screen, and maybe they're cut off on your, well, sorry about that. The learning experiences were fun and engaging is what that should say. 1% disagreed, 31% agreed, and 68% strongly agreed with learning experiences being fun and engaging. The field trips were fun and engaging. Again, we had 1% there, not sure, we didn't disagree, but wasn't sure. 21% agreed, and 78% strongly agreed. The lessons were clear and meaningful. We had 3% disagree, 5% not sure, and then the rest of that 92% were either agreeing or strongly agreeing. We asked, overall, did the program exceed, meet, or fall below your expectations for why you signed your child up for, should say the program? 1% said that it fell below their expectations. That was one out of all of the surveys. The rest of them were either meeting or exceeding the expectations of our families and of our children. So 29.3% meeting expectations of what people thought the program was going to be. You'll see in the comments, because I provided you as many as I could possibly fit, that many of the families said it was exactly what I expected. It was just what you had advertised, and we're pleased with that. And 69.7% share that it exceeded their expectations. And I have to be honest, I helped to shape the program, and my kids attended one of the programs, and it exceeded my expectations. And it was just incredible. You'll see, yeah, you'll see in some of the comments it said students came home and wanted to share what they learned. That was totally my kids as well. And I do not fill out my own surveys. I do ask my husband to, and he said I sent glowing remarks. I'm like, I would never be able to pick yours out because all families sent glowing remarks. It was really incredible. So you can tell I'm really energized about this because I'm just so proud of how well it went. 93% of families said they would participate again if offered. 3 said maybe, 1 said no. And then I've listed, I love reading through the comments. That's always my favorite part of survey data. I read through every single one. So any families out there, whenever you're filling out surveys, don't think this is going nowhere, nobody's going to read it. I read everything that comes into us when we put surveys out. I highlighted a few for you that really stood out to me. My son was so enthusiastic about how wonderful his teachers were and how nice they were. It redeemed the fun factor of school for him after a challenging year. He's excited to go to school again. Just a few more I wanted to point out. My daughter was more enthusiastic about this program above all of the other summer programs she has attended. They literally reignited my son's desire to be at school. He wasn't feeling the joy in 2nd grade. He is pumped to return to school in the fall. The educational but exciting offerings were impressive, and I loved hearing about the Kids' Day after picking them up. I just imagine all of them must have just, been bubbling over with wanting to share what they learned. And then last thing that I wanted to share is very appreciative with all the teachers that take the time to make the program work. It means a lot. You all have good hearts and shows that you love your work with kids. And I wanted to end on that note because truly this program would not have been successful this summer if we did not have so many of our staff members step up to take this on, especially after an incredibly challenging year, and they just did a phenomenal job. As I said, they far exceeded my expectations. The energy level was incredible, and it was so great that even some of the teachers reached out to me after and said they feel energized. Even though it was work, they feel energized because they could just see that love of learning that students were showing. So I will end my report with that.
And I'm going to co-opt a little bit of your report.
Okay.
And say that I shared much of this information and a really heartfelt email from a teacher who was thrilled with the program with Commissioner Pender-Macon, Maine Commissioner of Education, and she said it was the best email and the best communication she'd gotten all summer. She was thrilled with the program, and she wants to highlight it on their DOE best practices site. So I actually started to cry when I got the email from the teacher, seriously, because it was so, she was just so thankful and just appreciative of, the creative freedom with the program and how much fun the kids had. And she said, she's about my age, I'm 61, and she said it just re-energized her as an educator to do that. So I couldn't ask for more. It was a wonderful program.
Great. Great.
I'll put one more plug in here. So if you want to know exactly what were they doing during this program, you'll get that level of detail during the curriculum meeting when Sarah and I present.
Okay.
Great.
Someone's also
So can I
been-
ask a question on that? So Stephanie, this is great. I mean, I've actually had a chance to teach summer school in a different way, in different, I would say, century. But I wanted to ask you a couple things. So we know that a lot of kids were way behind on their academics as well. And I know this was also supposed to be fun and have some good time. So I'm good with that. How many students do you think did not attend that probably should have attended?
Well, I do want to point out that our students aren't necessarily way behind. What our data showed in the winter was that we had 2 red flag areas. So when I did my assessment review, the red flag areas were 3rd grade math was behind. That was a fact. The data was very clearly showing that. 2nd grade math and literacy were behind. But other than that, we did not see any major slip, any statistically significant slip between our fall and winter data. But with that said, there certainly are students that struggled this past year, and that data doesn't always, it didn't necessarily include all of our students that were doing off-site learning. Some of them were slightly more successful than others. And that's not the hybrid model with the high school and middle school. That's the off-site Edmentum program. And we did have some families that were more disengaged than that, than we would have liked to
Can you
have
comment about the middle school and the high school, the participation rate or whatever you know about that you can help us with?
participation rate.
Right, so in other words, like, I think nationwide, I believe it's about 35 to 40% of high school students, for example, failed one course during the last year. So can you give us any kind of idea, not only, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but what the participation was, how did we help these types of kids? What did we do for them? I know you mentioned it briefly when you started talking about it, but there was no detail, so.
Well, I can follow up with you next time if you want to know what if there were courses, like the number of courses that students failed in high school, and if you want a comparison of that. So I think when I presented the data to this group on assessments, I also shared with you the rate of passing courses in high school and how that compared to years in the past, but I haven't followed up with the end of the year. So we did have our credit recovery high school summer program that we ran as well, so I can get those numbers for you.
And you felt that was successful, though, the credit recovery program?
Yeah, we did have a fair number of students that attended that. I don't have that number right in front of me, but I can get that, and I can also get a comparison of what our, I don't like to call it our failure rate, but the number of students that were failing courses and how many were failed by the end of this year in comparison with years past that were pre-COVID.
And just along those lines, I never did get a final readout about people that did community service for the class that just graduated. I had asked for that. I think it's important that we focus on that coming up for this year. I really do think that we should do that. I would ask that we consider doing that as well. I don't know if we have a person that's in charge of that now at the high school. I know that the person that was doing is now at Region 8 or whatever it's called, Midcoast School of Technology. But I do think that's important that we continue doing that.
Yes, and they will have their, it was the student support coordinator. They do have somebody that will be fulfilling that position this year.
Okay, thanks.
I want to answer Doug's question in a different way.
Okay.
And so, this was really late May, I'd say early June, so I'm in a statewide meeting of superintendents with the commissioner. I was president of the Midcoast Association last year, and I gave it up this year because I'm just too busy. But the question came up from Pender, the commissioner, what are people planning for summer school? And there's like this collective groan from the superintendents about, the staff are burned out, nobody wants to staff my summer school. I can't staff it. Kids don't want to go. Nobody's got the energy to do it. And I'm talking about superintendents from all over the state. And I kind of let the conversation go on, and I said, just for what it's worth, I want to turn this on its head. So I don't know of anybody that wants to go to summer school, right? Especially not last summer. I didn't want to. So we didn't, I said, one thing we did was we learned a new vocabulary, and we called it summer camp, right?
Yeah.
Because everybody likes to go to camp, and I said, give the teachers creative freedom, partner up with community partners, make it fun, make it engaging. So we had a program that was fully staffed and really highly attended and really wonderful. So we focused on student engagement, ran a full program. If I'd have called it summer school, crickets. So that's sort of an answer to how many didn't go that probably should have. If we'd done something different, we wouldn't have had probably half the program that we had. So, just for what it's worth.
No, it's good.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I just want to say big thank you, Stephanie, John, all the site coordinators, all the staff. I mean, it just was just a great program and a great idea from the beginning, as you just discussed, John. I mean, I'm just really proud of the fact that we did that for our kids and families. It's exactly what they needed after COVID year. It's exactly what they needed. So it's great. And thank you, and make sure you thank our staff from us.
Well, absolutely.
Yep.
Actually, I'll make a comment, Lauren.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? It's so
I can.
weird. Okay.
No.
I've been following the Facebook page for the after school program, and it's just been a lot of fun to see the activities. And I was like, oh, can I come? But yeah, they really did look like there was a lot of engagement and a lot of really fun, but also creative and engaging, exactly what we were trying to do. So
Awesome.
Okay, thank you. Report of the business manager, please.
So it's been a year of change, been a year of very busy legislatures, both at the state and the federal level. Not only do we get the annual changes to how we have to account for everything in a public school, you recall last year we started out with a change in statute that added sick days, federal sick days to every employee. We expanded FMLA to include childcare. This year the state's done more and expanded it even more. The state has added earned paid leave, which at the very minimum has rescinded the restrictions that we have on things like personal days and turned a lot of these days that are really event-based into almost vacation days or use-at-will days. We have a new statute with the ARP that provides that the school will continue, or business will continue to pay the COBRA insurance amount for an employee who has left the district due to COVID. And so we're doing that. Theoretically, that should be paid back through payroll taxes, but the first time they tried that, schools were exempted from that, but we're still hoping that we will get that money back. I say that because each one of these has cost us more employee costs. We have a new federal purchasing procurement standard, and that came about really because of all this money flowing into the country through the Corona Relief Act, as well as the ESSER Act, or the ARP, which created the ESSER, which is the Elementary and Secondary School Education Recovery Fund.
Just won't go with COVID 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Well, you have to refresh me on COVID 1, 2, 3, 4, because they're a little out of order now.
Don't confuse us.
But what it did, it in some ways lifted the levels that would trigger some of our type of purchasing, whether it's been done through bidding or through negotiated procurement. But it also restricted it to make sure that we actually had to have these policies in place. And what you'll see later on tonight is a revision of our purchasing policy, which has not changed at all our local purchasing procedures and policy, but has added reference to the federal and the state policies, which we have to follow by law, and need to have that in policy in order to spend any of this new ARP money. It was not in effect for the CRF money for COVID 1, 4, and 5. It was not in effect, 1, 2, and 3, it was not in effect, but 4 and 5 it is. So in order for us to make any purchases at the federal level of $250,000 or more, we've got to have this policy in place and approved by the board, which is why it's coming to you tonight. Every school system in the state has had to revise their policy. It's why there was a 3-month backlog with Drummond Woodsum to rewrite these. Many schools just had Drummond Woodsum rewrite the entire policy from scratch, and the board adopted it. I decided that I felt that this board would be more comfortable if we took our current policy that was on the books and just revised it to meet the federal standards, and that's what you're seeing tonight. It basically increased what we call capital purchases. It used to be under $500. Now it's over $5,000. So, for example, the $1.2 million we spent on our technology this year, those were supplies, because each iPad was less than $5,000. So it's actually considered a supply, not a capital purchase. It increased the threshold for purchasing and bidding by about threefold, up to $250,000. It made sure that we gave preference to U.S.-based companies and restricted us from not giving geographic preference for federal contracts. So we can't prefer a main contractor versus an outside main contractor if that ever comes up. For the federal contracts, we can still use that as the local. It requires us to use materials that have the highest percent of recovered materials, so recycled materials. It required the written controls, and the written controls are ones that we've been using, which are the federal procurement manual that we've been using internally, and which is an administrative handbook, as well as an accounting handbook that we've been using informally, but this will come to the Finance Committee in a draft form, and we'll kind of review our internal controls for an accounting manual come September. I've given you the legislative news that came out from MSMA today. This goes over all of the statutes that affect schools, basically that have changed since we met last as a board. It's full of them. I mean, the good one, obviously, is 55% funding. So we will get over $1 million more a year based on that. Split between the 4 towns of Rockland, Thomason, South Thomason, and Cushing. There's money in it to expand our pre-K program. So that's something to think about, because we've talked about doing that in other buildings. And I'll come back to that in a second, because there's more funding that may actually help us build that space. There's some regarding negotiations. LD 52, I invite you to look at that. LD 61, I said that I expanded FMLA, so grandparents are now considered under FMLA. We have a lot of grandparents who take care of kids in this district, and so that could be impactful financially. It directs the Department of Education to create a process of moving CDS into the school systems. Again, that's going to be a financial issue, a space issue, and it's something we just need to consider as we talk going forward. Doesn't say it's got to be done, but they've got to put together a plan to transition, a process, a timeline, and implementation for transition.
Pete, I think there are 2 commissions or committees going to be working on that this year.
It looks like that. Right, they have a Joint Standing Committee on Education and Cultural Affairs no later than February 1st, 2022. So I don't see the second committee. But again, these are things that we just need to, keep an eye on and an ear down, because these could be impactful for us both space-wise and financially. It changes the student count in the funding formula again. It talks about reviewing the feasibility of going to a 30-minute lunch period. And that's going to affect our schools and the time in the classroom, and how many lunches that we can serve. So, if we're running 4 lunches at 20 minutes each, 4 lunches at 30 minutes is 2 hours. It's going to really impact staffing, as well as, obviously the students. And if anybody's been in a lunchroom, they know after 15, 20 minutes, kids are ready to get out. I'm not sure that this committee has actually done that for a while. There's a resolve to improve air quality and ventilation. Again, that's going to come, depending on what the results are, with a financial requirement. Again, we have money that might be able to offset that right now. There is also a change in how lead is measured in public buildings. It's lowering the limitations well below the federal standards, and it's going to make it more likely that schools or public buildings might have to report out on lead and do mitigation on that. We've seen that before. Generally, it's always been either a drinking fountain or a piece of hardware that's causing it. It's been fixed pretty easily for us, but that will be something that we'll be testing for. And if you look at the back, there's a lot of just bills carried over. So these are the things that we'll be looking for when the legislature comes back into session. I think that it might be a good idea to possibly have Vicki Wallach from MSMA or our legislators here to speak to the board about what's going on there, because they'll tell you that all of you as being elected officials pull a lot of weight in Augusta. And I think that some of these things are very impactful. Unemployment for bus drivers, that would actually dry up the bus driver pool for summers statewide. Minimum wage for school staff, FMLA to hourly employees. There's things in here that are impactful, and it's worth weighing in on, either positive or negative, whatever. So I'm not saying pick a side. I'm just saying these are things that, there's some important things that were held over that I think that will be brought up again. The next thing, I just wanted to kind of give a quick review of where we are on the federal grants. COVID 2 and 3, I think with CRF 1 and 2 is what I call them. Those were 2 grants that were established in the first round of funding under the CARES Act. Those were initially, if you remember, we had to spend them by December 31st. That was extended till June 30th. We have spent all but $11,000 of that on projects that we have been talking about all along. We have one project that's, and maybe Doug will ask about this at some point, but it's the clapboard over at the middle school. Just finally came in. But
You're over there putting it up.
But after they're over there putting it up, but
In the evenings.
the timing of it came in after June 30th. So I'm working with the DOE to actually allow that expense to go back, and that will take the CRF monies down to 0. But we've been spent, been approved, and been reimbursed for almost all, but about $150,000 of that. So that's been good. The COVID 1, 4, and 5. The first was $600,000 when the CARES Act was first established, and we held that back because it had much more flexibility than the COVID 2 and 3, the CRF money. We got a second funding level of $2.5 billion with COVID 4, or ESSER 2, and $5.6 million in ESSER 3 or COVID 5. Out of that 5.6, 1.2 million has got to be held back for recovery. And so we're working on programs such as summer school, summer camp would do that. Other programming, after school programming, a lot of other programming could qualify for that recovery for students. Out of that total of $8.7 million, we have spent have purchase orders with encumbered or have requisitions for about $900,000. So we have right now about $7.8 million that's unencumbered, and we are going to meet again next week to verify the positions that we actually will fill, because clearly things have changed, and a lot of the positions that were approved by the board, the one-year positions, are necessary. But other than that, there's been no changes to our thought process. We are moving ahead with the modulars. Pricing has been pretty stable. The market's come down for wood. The time frame is between 12 and 16 weeks for that. But we do need to make sure that we have a policy in place so that we can first go out and hire an engineer to put together the specs for us for the two schools, both the middle school and high school. And then I have 3 vendors who are willing to bid on this so that we can get this in. And the one I talked to this yesterday morning still is confident that this could be in place still by the first of the year, which was really no different than when John and I talked to him in person over the summer. So waiting has not been a problem. We didn't have to rush into it because space, it was not critical for opening schools after the change in some of the guidance from the CDC. And the thought process behind the modulars hasn't changed. We may not need them for spacing per CDC guidelines, but we still could use it for recovery. So lower class sizes and sometimes one-on-one tutoring. We still have a real need for, especially in special ed, consulting and evaluations. There's a real backlog, and I think Janet will agree that that's been a priority to get those caught up. But we have dozens, if not hundreds, that we need to catch up on for that. So the reason behind the modulars hasn't changed, and the long-term strategy of using them to free up space in this building, like the original plan for central office, hasn't changed either, which, again, it's just financially makes sense that we're not in another building when we don't need to be, when we have the space here. Some of the considerations that we need for the ESSER when we talk again and as we plan is also keeping in mind the changes in the air quality statutes and how that might affect us. Making sure we have enough space for our 4 to 6 year old special ed students that may be coming from CDS in the next couple of years, as well as pre-K. And there will be funding coming down for construction that may help us with pre-K. There's also a new round of the school renovation fund, the school revolving renovation fund, which gives us up to $1 million per school based on projects. We did some of that. That allowed us to put the sprinkler system in the high school last time, among a couple other things.
I'm sorry, wait a minute. You said $1 million per school?
Per building, per school.
In our district?
In our district.
That's happening.
We can apply for that.
We can apply for that, okay, thanks.
So there's priority 1, which includes indoor air quality, structural roof repair, hazardous material abatement or removal, ADA compliance, and other health, safety, and compliance renovations. And priority 2 is school buildings, structures, windows, doors, water, and septic systems. So there's potentially, we can use this money for some of the roofs that we need to be replaced rather than general fund money or taxpayer money.
And completing the
windows could come under that priority 2. I think we'll focus on priority 1 first, and we might put that out there. I think the windows are a great idea.
I've never brought it up before, but
it was one of it was. I think it was an idea we had. What? How many? 7 years ago? Was that when we first started that? And then the pre-K. Having space for pre-K at Thomas and Grammar, at Cushing, would make sense. So, if we can figure out which grants would apply for those renovations and constructions, I think that will be helpful. Again, rather than bonding it ourselves, rather than going to the taxpayer, use as much of this money as we can. And if there's more construction money coming from the state for things like pre-K in particular, I think we'll take advantage of that as well.
Pete, ask you a question about county governments have gotten or are getting millions of dollars each, depending on size. Have you heard anything about that in terms of if we can request some for something in our school district from that county?
From the county? We can. We can definitely request that from the county. I'd say stand in line.
Yeah.
Because I watched that last county commissioners meeting when they were meeting, and there are a lot of groups, really good groups, that are coming forward and trying and putting together proposals that are covering, again, more than one town, whether it be the, access to internet, whether it be low-cost housing. Those are the two that came up in the last meeting. I think the towns are looking to see, is there a way to combine town money and county money to pool resources? I think that's certainly a fair way of looking at it.
I'd like to ask you and John to be sort of mindful of the Child and Family Center that we've talked about for a long time, added to this building, and somehow I'll talk more about it later, but if you guys can be watchful of that for all of this, including county.
But I think we think of it the other way too. We try to make sure that, we spend our money that's given to us from the government on the kids first and foremost, but using resources in our 5 towns. I think Stephanie has really, and our site coordinator has done an incredible job reaching out to a lot of our partners in our communities and get them all involved. And I think that's going to be just the beginning. We've talked about this a lot, and Stephanie is working on that. It's just created a kind of a template to create this public-private nonprofit partnership between the school system and so many different organizations that we're rich with here in this community. Finally, since we met last, I received my certificate in financial education from Georgetown University. Good for me.
Congratulations.
And it wouldn't be a really great meeting without, at the end of the meeting, if you would sign your name to these warrants. I really would appreciate it, and so would some of our towns.
Good.
So I will have these after the meeting.
Good.
They are the assessments that we did virtually back in June.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Pete?
I have a few.
I'll write them down.
How about 2?
Well, I got more than that, but okay. First of all, I know we're going to be looking at this policy as well. So, and I was reading through it as you were talking. I was trying to pay attention to you and read it at the same time. So I apologize for that. But obviously, there's a couple school buildings. Thomaston Grammar School comes to mind. The middle school comes to mind, where they are overcrowded in certain areas and certain places. And I always say that, like the science lab in middle school, some of the elementary school classrooms are really stuffed in there. And you mentioned about adding pre-K to that. So would you envision that with those modulars that you're thinking of going to the middle school, or would you do it some other way?
I'd be open to any idea, but for example, and you didn't mention this, but the Cushing School, if we were to add a pre-K classroom down there, that was a building designed for 4 classes, 4 grade levels. We have 5 now, so it already needs space. I would envision probably building on to some of these buildings,
Would you,
not just
as an attachment to the building or as a separate building?
That's something for the architects and engineers.
Okay.
I think that would be. I'm not thinking of just plopping something down and using it to house a separate facility. I think it would be something that we want to incorporate in this property. Is how I would envision it.
Okay. So the other thing I'm thinking about is the foundation work, the electrical work, and all the other stuff that would go with the modulars. And there's a price limit of what, $250, I guess.
That's the minimum. That's,
Minimum, I know.
that's
but
just where, that's where
I mean,
the,
that's a high minimum, to make those types of decisions. So one of the things I'm questioning is, should it be that high? It should be 250, should it be lower? I'm not going to pick a number, but I think maybe 100, 150. I mean, that's a lot of money to put in one person's hands to make that decision. I understand.
so is anything over $250,000, and this is federal law.
No, I'm asking.
Yep.
I don't care about federal law.
Yep.
I'm saying for us as a board, that's quite a high number, 250 or higher. I don't care if it's federal law or not.
Right.
I mean, to me, that's a high number. So my thought process would be, I don't know what it should be. I don't know if $250,000 is the right amount. It seems high to me. It does seem high to me to put that. I can see the need to be in this environment where it's very difficult to get things built in a timely fashion, where it might be helpful, but I'm not sure I would want to spend that much money in giving that much power to one person.
So
to make
this
that
policy
decision.
is just reiterating federal law. The part 2 of that policy is the local policy, and that's the policy that is not subject to state or federal grant money. So that just lays out what the procurement policy is federally and statewide in the first paragraph.
What's the state law? Is it less?
It's on there. It's only for items, and I think it's 4,000. I forgot.
4,000 for school buses, but for alterations and repairs over 250. 250 is,
And this just lays out the type of policy. Okay.
Yeah, can we go to this discussion when we have it on the agenda?
sure, I mean, I'm just asking the question about it, to clarify that. And the same thing, I have another question about further down the policy, so I'll wait for that.
Yeah, okay. Anything else for Pete? All right. Thank you, Pete. Thank you for using COVID terminology on the funding. I appreciate that. Makes my head work
Coming
better.
back to it's coming back.
It's coming back, yeah. All right, so for my report, I just want to welcome back everybody to meeting in person. It's just really cool to see you all, be part of the same room, and I could do without the plexiglass, but I guess we're just being extra cautious, right?
I'm getting used to it.
You're getting used to it, yeah. All right. I also want to welcome the new board members, and wondering if you could, just say your name and, of course, where you're from, and maybe the major reason that you decided to jump onto the school board. Go ahead. You got to speak, loud enough, yeah.
Yeah, my name's Dave Martz. I live on Route 17 in Rockland. I've been on school board before, and I enjoyed it, sort of. I'm retired now. I have time, so I thought I would, and there was an opening.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kihara Morvising. I'm from Thomaston. I've always cared about schools and young people. I'm a former teacher, high school teacher in public schools, and have a doctorate in education, worked with pre-service teachers getting their master's degree, supervise them in the classroom, and I also worked doing a lot of post-secondary access work, helping to set up young people and families with education after high school. So just excited to be here and serve the community and serve the schools, and looking forward to this work.
Thank you. And you would, okay to appoint you to the MCST Board of Directors?
Sure.
Yes. So we talked about it before. It's not just on the spot. I just need to have it in the minutes, okay, so that we have this conversation that I am appointing you. It has to be in our minutes for them to be like, all good with it, okay? I want you all to know, for folks new and continuing after November, we're going to have a full orientation of members in November at our workshop meeting, the third Thursday of the month because there can be a lot of new folks, and so we want to just say that we're going to have an orientation then and go through, serving on a board and also our mission and all that kind of stuff. So just to keep that in mind for the future. Focusing again on relationships, proficiencies, and pathways. I just think we're doing amazing, amazing work in those areas in this district. Incredibly proud of the work that we're doing, and our staff is just leading the way in areas that I just don't know if other districts are doing. And there are two things that we're adding this year that I think are unbelievably significant. One is the expansion of the after-school program, which you'll talk about later, right? You're going to go through that when it's on the agenda. But I just know from the after-school program from years before and the one we have now that the data of student engagement and success is off the charts. And so the fact that we are expanding it now to all of our schools is just some of the best news ever. I just can't say enough about that, a program that we have, the staff that we have, and the fact that we're expanding it. So that is really exciting news. Great in terms of the caring relationships and building proficiencies work that we're doing. The second thing we're doing, so the Freshman Academy, you know about that, right? And we've seen the numbers, like amazing numbers in terms of student engagement and success that we've had in the Freshman Academy. And it's based on the BARR model, B-A-R-R, building assets and reducing risks. And there was like years ago, I met with someone in Brunswick, I had coffee with her, and she described to me the BARR program. And I remember leaving there and I texted John some sort of like, this is the biggest thing, remember that when I texted you that?
I do remember that.
And so I've been, I think, just shy of obnoxious about this for you, or would you say fully obnoxious about pushing this for you?
I'd say somewhere in between.
You're being diplomatic.
Pretty and really obnoxious, but that's okay.
So I've just really been pushing it because it just, I felt for a long time it works so well, the evidence is so good. And so we're going to have it in the middle school, right? I think you've asked the new principal to get it up and going in the middle school. So we'll be active in the middle school, the Freshman Academy, and the Sophomore Academy. I just think those are the ideal grades to utilize this program. Really, really strong in caring relationships and building proficiencies. In fact, it's so good. I'm going to show you a video about it just to give you a better idea of the BARR program and what it's all about. So let me get to there. And to display. Okay. So it's like a 5 or 6 minute video just telling you about the BARR program, essentially what it is, what it's about, where it comes from. And we get the same results in our district already with what they're doing.
What is BARR? That's usually the first part of it is, okay, you're doing some pretty amazing things, we're seeing some really amazing results, and it usually comes out of some data point.
Higher attendance percentages, higher credits earned, fewer discipline referrals, a significant reduction in course failures, and overall reported of teacher satisfaction. So several teachers in their first year of BARR, closer to the end of their career, said that this is the reason why they got into teaching.
One of the ways it's helping us close the opportunity gap is in our graduation rates, and that has a lot to do with that connection and that feeling of support.
I've never been to a school district that didn't talk about like supporting the whole child, right? We're going to support the whole child, but what does that look like? I believe BARR plays a tremendous role in helping students feel welcome, supported, which then allows them to persist.
You can see a complete change and it affects the entire campus. It also has helped to change how teachers respond to student behavior.
Does it change the way that I'm looking at the kids? Absolutely. I see more chances to do something with my observations.
It's just not a program to, bring numbers up, but it's built in a positive aspect to the school experience.
It transforms the way teachers see school, transforms the way kids see school. BARR really brings teachers together, kids together, and families together, and that's better for all of us in the end.
We kept hearing about St. Louis Park and this amazing program that they have going on. They're graduating students at a much higher rate. Students are coming and they're earning more credits. It's like, what are they doing?
In St. Louis Park in 1998, I was the 9th grade counselor, and half the students failed. It was the 5th year in a row. I went to the principal.
She was not in good shape. I think she was about ready to quit.
He provided a much broader frame. In fact, this was a national phenomena that about half the 9th graders are failing courses, and really challenged me to come up with a new model.
And under Angie's leadership, we started working with 9th grade teachers, trying to address programming needs that the teachers thought would help support kids who were struggling.
I think when Angie started to kind of reveal to the rest of the school how extensive our failure rates were, I think most people realize, okay, something's got to change.
So that was the beginning of BARR. BARR is building assets, reducing risks. So the elevator pitch of BARR is if you focus on positive, intentional relationships, and those relationships are staff to student, staff to staff and student to student, at the same time really being attentive to data. And so data is not just what's attendance or grades or discipline, but it really is kind of who is the student. We know that students and adults will be more successful.
It really changed the climate in the school. Everybody felt it.
In 2010, we received our first research grant from the U.S. Department of Education, investing in innovation funds. What that enabled us to do is to really test the model. After the second round of studies, we had 66 schools, and every single school showed dramatic changes in the first year, and I knew it was for real.
We have the unique privilege of being able to say that BAR has worked in every school that we've implemented it in.
You know, there's 8 strategies, there's 8 components, and we can speak to each of those. And usually schools will say, well, I'm doing that, or we kind of already get that. But the unique part of BAR is that it's using all 8 of those together, and it's the connectedness of all 8.
If you don't know a kid, you can't teach a kid effectively. And if a kid doesn't trust you, which is what BAR does, is build relationships, then you can get kids to learn in a way that you never could before.
So when a school signs on, there's support all the way through, because it isn't easy to transform education, and that's why we know the support needs to be there.
The coordinator is put into place usually pretty early on, and that coordinator is provided with a variety of support.
And there's also trainings throughout the year for the teachers to interact with other teachers across schools that are also implementing BAR.
It brings together people from around the country that you would have never met if it weren't for BAR, and now you have that connection with them.
I tell them we did that freshman year. It made me think a lot deeper into things and like stuff that I never expected to talk about in school, especially as freshmen.
The teachers working together with the same students is a critical aspect of it, that block unit.
You're off of your island. Through BAR, I interact with the kids, science and math teachers, which I would have never done before.
What's the most critical portion of BAR? For a teacher, I say it's our block meeting. It's our opportunity to come together and compare notes on students.
We meet at least once a week to do block meetings, and then anything they can't do as a teacher, if it's outside their scope, I take that back to risk review.
The risk review team supports a student at school, but also looks for community resources to help support students and sometimes their families as well. Nobody slips through the cracks because we're looking at it in a very systemic way.
We want to keep our families engaged in the process, which allows the parents and the teachers to be able to provide feedback to the staff, to the BAR coordinator, in a way to be able to then scale the impact that we're providing.
It's been really exciting just to talk to other principals. It takes a lot of practices that occur in isolation on many campuses and puts them all together under one umbrella, which would be BAR.
One of the key pieces about BAR is it's same students, same teachers, better results.
I have not a doubt in my mind that it will help almost every school to get better results than they currently do, and to have a better school climate and just have more fun at school.
When you go there,
I think it comes down to like not a certain thing that they do, but like knowing that like you're a person as well. So I'm just trying to get to know you better. So
BAR to me is the program that is like there for you. Like they're watching if you need help. Like say if you're falling, they'll help to try to catch you.
The understanding that gave me is to help like meet the people and like get to know people around me more.
With the teachers, I know it's easier to bring up things with them.
Not only like has it helped me be organized and things like that, but it has also like given me like an extra push.
Or with people, socially, friends, it's easier to make friends, which is always great.
It's for every school, you know, so if you're doing well academically, BAR still supports the work that you're doing around building school culture, building school climate, supporting student success overall, even outside of the classroom as well. It's really about building a strong school community.
I'm going to turn this off. Okay, so that's quick introduction to the BAR program. Again, we've had it as the basis of our freshman academy for years. Been working very well there. And Stephanie, John, anything you want to add about all this?
It's a pretty simple concept. I mean, it's based on the idea of teams, and the whole idea is building assets and reducing risk for students. So it's continually, so instead of being in isolation I teach science, I teach English, I teach social studies, and we don't talk about our students that we have in common. They have meetings about student progress in one class and is shared with the other teachers. So it's a whole student, whole team concept in supporting students, and it's a wonderful way to do it. I think originally sort of designed because of the insular nature of high schools or the traditional high school and departments, where teachers didn't really collaborate that much together and sort of knock those walls down. It has been a tremendous success at the high school. It's very much in line with middle school philosophy and middle school team modeling already, so it's a great fit for middle school as well.
Yeah, I was just going to add that middle school is set up beautifully for this because they already have the teaming model. So it's really just this additional layer. Not all of our middle school teachers are familiar with this, so there will be, there's implementation. It is a 3-year implementation plan. But there are some teachers that have seen some of the work in action and some of the resources that the 9th grade teachers use, because we've had an 8th grade to 9th grade transition team, and there were a lot of conversations of, oh, this looks neat. Oh, we should have a document like this. So this is a great opportunity to use our ESSER funding to put structures in place that are going to support our students. So it'll be great.
The timing is great because of the funding support. So
right.
New principal coming in too.
Right.
That's great. So
right. We had a grant to do the one in the freshman academy, right? And then we have this ESSER funding for this. Yeah.
Interestingly, I've had experience with this model in my former district, which was very successful. And then I saw a presentation from teachers from SAD 3, RSU 3, I guess, who were implementing it, and that was several years ago, and they were just absolutely thrilled, said it was the best thing they've ever done.
Right.
So that makes 3 districts now that I've worked in.
Yeah.
That have implemented that model
Yep.
to great success. So,
Yep. Just plain works. Again, relationships and the tracking, like every student is discussed by the team like once every 2 weeks, isn't something like that? And then interventions when needed, and I've heard from students like, wow, what a difference it made, and we also have that great data. So anyway, just a great thing that we're doing. The middle school, completing the MAR model, I think, in our district, and it's just great news. The last thing I want to say about discovering pathways is I would like to ask the curriculum committee to go heavy into pathway work this year, to be analyzing and understanding our pathways like the STEM Academy and Liberal Arts Academy and everything else we're doing to really sort of flesh out what we mean by that for students and their experience. So I think we've got a good year to really dive into that in that committee and then to bring it forward to the school board, but also to include a lot of staff, whatever you think, Stephanie and John, in terms of including staff in those conversations. But
yeah, that works perfectly with Mr. Barkey's objective for the school this year is building out those pathways. So that will mesh perfectly,
Great.
I think. Yeah.
Great.
it also highlights the fact that we never run out of things to do.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's very true. I do want to say that, we've come so far in just a few years in terms of what we do around social emotional learning and just full academic success. We've got second step K-5, we've got restorative practices K-12, the after-school program 21st century style, and then the addition we're talking about tonight, the freshman academy, the BAR model in the high school and the middle school. There are many other programs going on in our districts, like I know Mindful Circles in Cushing and things like that. We also have amazing community partners. You guys know about Trekkers, The Landing Place, again, restorative practices, and many others. We just have amazing partners working with our kids and working with us. This coming year in the Student Engagement Task Force, we're going to be talking about building resilience in RSU 13, which is basically a different way of understanding trauma-informed district. I teach a class or a few classes in this at UMaine, and really excited to get going on this work with our community partners as well. The Child and Family Center, again, we talked about this just briefly in terms of bricks and mortar, if we can do that, but we actually don't need to do that if we don't want to. So the legislature this year and the governor signed a bill to allow for $6 million a year from federal funding to start up community child and family intervention areas. Like Skowhegan has the first one, it's called Elevate Maine. Again, there's great data around the fact that it works with struggling kids and families. So we, John, and others, I think, Chelsea, you were there once for a meeting of an early childhood group that we formed. And we just kind of like had to stop because we didn't have funding source. Now we do. We can apply for this funding next year and for the community to utilize. And it's a very, very exciting thing that we can try to do and bring to our area. So those are a couple more things that we can be working on this next year, as well as the Discovering Pathways part. The last thing I want to say is that the last school board meeting that we had, it was, through Zoom, but I talked about how everybody is awesome and welcome in our district. It doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter your race, doesn't matter your religion, doesn't matter anything. If you're an older, white, heterosexual man like me, you are awesome and welcome in our district, and I want everybody to know that. I want everybody to know that as to what our district is all about. So it's really important to reiterate all the time. Any questions for me at this point? Yes.
I was wondering if we could do two things. One is when we have the reports, the committee reports, if we could include, just a note about when the negotiating team meets, because I think that's important for public transparency.
Okay.
And then the second is, I would love an update. I know we don't have an executive session scheduled, but I would love an update on what you guys talked about. So we had a meeting and then you guys had a meeting, so I'd love a follow-up to that.
Okay. Let me just say now that we don't have any meetings scheduled at the moment. And we had to basically stop our work the end of June and take July off, and now we're going to resume, I believe, sometime this month. So I'm trying to think when we last spoke. You want to add something?
Well, we could probably do an update of some nature around the workshop time,
Okay.
I would say.
Okay.
If that would be helpful.
Executive session to do
Yeah, we'll
that.
do an executive session.
Yeah.
We're talking about negotiations, correct?
Yeah.
Right, yes.
I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, okay. Anything else? Okay, this is RSU 13. We love our staff, we love our kids, and we are awesome together. Next on the agenda, we have 7 business items. So I'm going to go through the appointment of different staff coming to our district. We are so thankful they want to work with us and work with our kids. So the first name, David, I'm not going to be able to say your name right, and I apologize. I know I can't, but do you have any idea?
Greikowitz.
Greikowitz, thank you. Thank you. 8th grade science, Oceanside Middle School. Susan Hood, guidance, Oceanside High School. Meredith Mitchell, classroom teacher, Ash Point Community School. Emily Prothero, tech integrator, Cushing Community School. Brenda Thomas, Title I teacher, South School. Lucy Martin, special education or social worker. Ilsa Pernage, 7th grade science, Oceanside Middle School. Caitlin Robbins, resource room teacher, Thomaston Grammar School. Kimberly Blair, BCABA, district-wide. Teresa O'Hare, tech integrator, Ash Point Community School. Kimberly Day, 3rd grade, South School. Rachel Hendricks, special education teacher, Thomaston Grammar School. And
Nadia Stanzihoff.
Nadia Stanzihoff, thank you. General education, social worker, Oceanside Middle School. Do you have a motion on this?
Motion to accept.
Motion to accept. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mark, and seconded by Susan. Any discussion? Seeing none, I can ask for.
We don't have to call the roll.
Raise their hands,
I can
right?
see the hands.
Then raise your hands. You vote in favor of this.
Looks like
It is unanimous.
Unanimous. Very good. Thank you.
Or isn't it? Put my hand up and it's a long time. It's awesome. Okay, B, to accept the resignation of Molly Harriman, Athletic Director, effective July 30, 2021. Ashley Katapano-Kangas, Special Education Teacher, effective August 31, 2021. Christine Lampfair, Alternative Education Teacher, effective August 31, 2021. And Maggie Drinkwater, Speech Language Pathologist, effective August 31, 2021. Is there a motion to accept?
Can I ask a question?
1 second. Motion is Carol. A second is Mark. And now you may.
Is it common for you to have resignations at this time of year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, haven't they signed contracts already?
Well, they've resigned previously. This is the first board. We didn't have a board meeting in July.
Okay, but when are your contracts due, just out of curiosity?
June 30, the end.
June 30th?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now you can say our contracts, not yours.
Yes, sorry.
Except teachers,
Yeah,
August
used
31st.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Teachers are August 31st.
For the, sign the contract?
For the contract term. There's
Yeah, but usually the contracts are due in April or May, aren't they?
Right.
So it is really common that this
I
happens.
mean, usually there's a penalty that you have to waive.
They're all well within their time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nobody that's abrupt, we'll put it that way.
Okay, I was just curious. I'm used to them being earlier in the year.
Yeah. No, this is really common, yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Lauren?
Yes.
So I would like to amend the motion to accept the resignation of Molly Harriman with regret.
Athletic Director, yes, thank you very much. Yep, absolutely. And any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? It is unanimous vote. C, to approve an employee's request for an unpaid leave of absence starting March 2022 through the end of the school year. John will describe. Oh, motion?
A motion in a second.
Yep. Carol and Dave, a second.
You'll hang on, bear with me for just 1 minute.
We shall bear.
Okay. Okay, the individual is an Ed Tech 3 at Oceanside High School. I'm contacting you regarding the 2021-2022 school year contract and hoping this can be added to the board meeting for discussion. In the spirit of clarity, I would like to sign the contract with the hope of being able to take an unpaid leave of absence starting March 2022 through the end of the school year. My goal is to head to Georgia, Springer Mountain, to do a spring-summer walk on the Appalachian Trail. I would do this with the intent to be back in time for the 2022-23 school year. The hike has been a dream of mine for many years. Life is teaching me that things will not slow down or become less complicated, and I truly believe that this is the time for me to see this goal through to fruition. That being said, as this pandemic has proven to us, if something unforeseen comes up and I cannot start this trek, I would be staying until the end of the 2021-22 school year. Thank you for taking the time to consider this, and I look forward to your response. And I will say that this is all I have on this request. I cannot grant it. The board can. But in talking to the high school, they feel that the absence could be covered, but have no opinion on the granting or not granting of the request. And neither do I.
Okay.
I don't have a recommendation, in other words.
You don't have a recommendation?
Nope. I don't. Very rare, but I don't.
Okay. Any questions? Yes.
So John, would we be approving the leave as well as the cancellation of that leave if the plans change? Or would that be something that you would be able to determine based on whether the high school could work it out?
If she decides to cancel it, we can just go forward with that. I don't need another board vote. But in order to approve it, the board would have to approve it.
Oh, no, I was wondering whether or not that would cause problems for you in the long run.
Well, let me put it this way. If I hire someone to fill her position, she cannot cancel it.
Right. Okay. All right. So
Done.
Okay. So our decision will not impact that.
No, it will not.
Okay.
And the position you're hiring would have to be a one-year position, is that correct?
That is correct.
John, I have just one quick question about it.
Go ahead.
So in the past, when people have taken like a leave of absence, basically they've had to make up the money that it costs the district extra out of their paycheck for benefits and that sort of thing. Would that apply here?
I'm not sure I follow you. Make up the money.
I'll try to do it from personal experience. We had a teacher who taught 4th grade at South School who had to take unpaid leave of absence for a period of a week or whatever it was, to have somebody step in and take that person's place. And they had to pay, in addition to their salary, they had to pay their benefits back to the person, to the district, out of their paycheck. Would that apply in this case or not? If the person's taking unpaid leave, they would not be taking any pay at all, no benefits, no insurance, no nothing. correct? They're out of the district because they're taking an unpaid leave. Am I correct on that?
I believe that is correct, yes.
Yes, for that, for this
And the
leave,
person that's taking this leave understands that.
They're asking for unpaid leave, so I'm making the assumption that they do.
Okay.
All right. Anything further?
I just want to clarify, did I understand that in order to fill this spot from the time of March 22 of the request, that you'd have to hire somebody for a full year?
I'd have to hire them for the duration of that leave, that's right.
Okay, but I thought you had said you'd have to hire them for an entire year, but you're just filling the hole, basically.
I will give one sort of qualifying comment on the whole thing, and that is, it is difficult, particularly in these times, to hire a temporary worker. And I'll leave it at that.
Yes.
One-year positions are tough to fill.
I didn't quite catch, what is the position?
It's an ed tech at the high school.
Ed tech?
Educational technician.
Okay.
They're an assistant to a teacher in a program.
Kiara?
So it seems like the trade-off to me, if I'm understanding correctly, is that, you know, you have a trained employee who theoretically, it sounds like, wants to come back after this leave. It's, you know, someone who's committed to the district, that's helpful to have that person come back. At the same time, it could be a hassle if there's a vacancy for 2 months to train up someone. I mean, I know training someone up in itself takes a month a lot of the time. And so, but it doesn't sound like the high school has a concern about like covering the students, because I think that would be my priority, is that the students' needs are covered, and if there's a vacancy and it's hard to fill.
Yeah, again, I'd answer that by saying that my concern is does prove difficult to hire a person for a one-year vacancy or a short-term vacancy.
Yeah.
So I won't deny that.
And if we approve it, John, you don't have a say in it at all. We can't approve it if it works out for you and give you some leeway there.
Well, quite frankly, if she had simply requested this of me, that would be one thing, but did not.
I see.
This clearly went to the board.
So if we rejected it, she could apply directly to you.
Good.
Okay.
So that's the normal mode of operation, is to contact you and to work through you on things like this.
I don't know that there is a normal mode when it comes to these requests. They tend to go different ways from different people.
Yeah, I mean, some things that's required for us to vote on, and other things aren't.
I mean, the board's had requests similar to this in the past, where people have requested leave for various and sundry reasons. So my job is to give you the rationale that the person provided and let you decide what to do. And in this case, my only comment is that it is difficult to hire somebody for a temporary position. So I can't help you there.
Okay.
The board has dealt with similar requests. What has the board's position been on those requests in general? I mean, have we generally granted them? Have we generally not granted them?
I'd say sometimes yes, sometimes no. I don't have a checklist of how many.
Sometimes, okay.
Mark?
Any particular reason why this person isn't before us tonight?
They knew it would be on the agenda, so I don't know.
We've seen people ask for time off before, and they usually come and make their case to us directly rather than, you know, just appearing on the agenda, so I'm wondering about that.
Anything further? I'm going to vote no, because I would prefer that staff go through the superintendent for this. And I think that it's important for us to be mindful of all of that in the future. I know that we've had others. I know we've had votes before, but I think precedent is important, and, you know, just going through the superintendent on things like this is important. So that's, I'm explaining where I'm coming from, if that helps at all.
Do we have a policy about this? I thought we did.
I can read the contract for you if you'd like.
Sure, that may be what I'm thinking about.
So it's under other leaves. Additions to present leaves and/or additional leaves of absence, either with or without pay, may be granted at the discretion of the board/designee. Benefits to which an employee was entitled at the time of his/her leave commenced, including accumulated sick leave, shall be restored upon the employee's return from a leave of absence. The employee shall be assigned to the same or comparable position held at the time the leave commenced. Employees granted unpaid leave of absences may continue health and dental benefits for up to 1 year at their own cost. After 1 year, COBRA will be made available.
Could you reread the first sentence?
Under the last piece, first, or
The part where it said the school board or the designee.
additional leaves of absence, either with or without pay, may be granted at the discretion of the board/designee. So the board designee could be
the superintendent, right?
Yes.
Have we defined a designee?
No. I mean, it should be board chair, but not in this case. I mean, it hasn't been
Oh,
defined.
it'd be the superintendent would be the designee.
But is it defined in the contract, or is it, no?
Not in the support staff contract, no.
I'm just asking because it says school board in there, and that's probably why it was sent to the school.
It says school board/designee, which generally is what we use for either the superintendent, or if it's a superintendent or designee, it's usually a superintendent and business manager, principal, who they designate. So the school board could designate a person.
So I'm saying we haven't, so. So that's why I'm guessing we got the thing rather than going to,
Right.
we followed the contract.
Yep. Carol?
Well, I made the motion because I think a person's request ought to see a vote, but I'm going to vote no, because as Mark said, I would prefer to have, and this is March that the person's asking. Between now and March, that person can certainly come and sit in the chair and talk to us about it and convince us. And I think going directly to the board instead of going to her ultimate supervisor of supervised supervisors, which is John, I think was an inappropriate way to approach it. So I think this person might be educated further by our no vote and take another whack at it in person.
Janet, is this the person you emailed me about today? Yes. Because I didn't know the name, so I'm sorry. I mean, she asked you to ask me if she should be here, so.
She asked if she had to work this evening, if she should try to get off work and come and present to the board.
Yeah, so that's my fault. I didn't know who it was. I did not know the connection, and I apologize to her for that.
But we still have time.
So the board could decide just to table this vote and then ask her to appear.
I'm with that,
Might be
because
a
she
thought.
deserves it. I mean, she asked.
Right.
And I didn't know, and I failed, and
Yeah.
so she deserves that ability.
Well, I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Okay, you're gonna do that, and you seconded?
And
I was
Dave
going
seconded.
to move the table.
Okay.
And then I'm going to make a motion to table her request until our next meeting.
You second that?
No, the motion to table, doesn't that have to occur while the motion's active?
Technically, yes.
So I would move to table.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want a second? Carol?
Yes.
Okay.
It's actually,
Okay.
sorry.
Not to be a pain, but
Yeah.
just to sort of counter-propose, I guess I would rather that the principal or the superintendent make this decision because we don't know the employee, and if the district wants to retain this person, you know, it just seems to me like that's a decision that someone who knows the employee should make, rather than us.
I'm with you on that. I understand your point. I understand.
So we can't push the decision back down?
Tabled motions don't get discussed.
Yeah, so we've got a motion to table that has been seconded, so it's a non-debatable motion, so we have to vote on that.
All right, so I'm sorry, I don't know all Robert's rules, I just don't. So we're gonna vote. All those in favor to table?
Looks like that's unanimous to me.
No, that is not.
No, it's fine, it's fine.
She's a yes, it's unanimous. Anyway, okay, so a discussion around this. So Chelsea, you had a point? You had a question?
Well, can we still discuss it? I can discuss what I wanted to say during the policy report. So.
Okay. Dave?
Can we make a motion to designate a designee. And I'd like to move to designate the superintendent as the, I'm losing my
Right.
tongue.
So our policy states how we can and should make motions during a meeting.
Okay.
And I would have to look it up to see something about the vote, if it's a 2/3 or something. I don't remember that policy. But if we just could make it easier and just not do that now, would that be
That's
all right?
fine. I thought it would be an easier method. She could then,
Yeah.
that she could then redirect her request to the designee.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. All right, so we tabled it
And we're done.
and we're done.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to move on, but I understand all your concerns. Get them all.
Lauren, I'm going to excuse myself.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Pete, I'll talk to you later.
Sure you will.
Good night, Mr. Curtis.
Got your number,
Enjoy the rest
I
of
got your
your
number
evening.
blocked.
All right. D is to ratify the revised Mid-Coast School of Technology Cooperative Agreement. Is there a motion? Chelsea, second. Mark, thank you. Any enumeration of this, John, or discussion?
This is something that has to be done every year, and my understanding is that this has not been substantively changed
It's nice to see our friend.
at all.
What are the insubstantial changes?
Well, I'm not qualified to go through that with you, unfortunately.
Lauren?
I'm on that board. I don't remember anything that is of note.
It's
Yeah.
very little, if anything, according to Bobby.
Yep.
Ask a question?
Yes.
What is the overall budget for the,
Mid-Coast.
yeah.
I don't remember that number. Any?
I don't have it in my...
What is our percentage of it? Because it was, you had to know numbers to know what the percentage was.
Yeah.
We contributed about 47,000, I believe, last year because the state pays a significant
So we
piece of
don't
it.
pay much toward
We
it.
don't pay much. We used to, but
Of the
that's changed
Of the
since
operating
I've-
budget.
Wait, explain what
Not
you
the
mean there.
debt.
We also pay,
the operating,
another
not the debt.
$600,000 a
Yes.
year in debt.
How much?
I think it's about 600,000. I'll get the number for you in a second.
Okay.
But that's stuff voters approved
Right.
in the past.
bond,
So
yeah.
that's not connected
Well,
necessarily.
the 600,000, we
agreement.
have to pay regardless.
Right.
Because we,
Correct.
right. But the 47, but the operating costs are significantly more than $47,000.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but our share of it is only 47, in the neighborhood of $50,000,
Yes.
plus or minus, depending on the number of students. And
By the way, have you been there?
I've driven by it.
You got to go in, man. Everybody, if you haven't gone in, say it's amazing. It's like a unbelievable building and programming for our kids. Just crazy good. So lucky to have it. Anything else on this before we take a vote? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's a unanimous vote. E, to approve the after-school program framework. Is there a motion? Susan, second on Chelsea. Thank you. And now a discussion of this program framework. It's you?
Should I,
Yeah,
should I jump right in? Okay. So you probably got lots of paperwork on this, and the one that I handed out at the beginning, I'm going to pop up here on the screen because this was sort of the abbreviated needs assessment. So this is the one that has the charts on it, and it says after-school programming needs poll. And I'm just going to put this up on the screen too. Okay, so this poll only went out to Ash Point Community School, Cushing Community School, and Thomaston Grammar School families, because those are the three schools where after-school programming currently does not exist. Our 21st Century grant funding supports programming after school at South School, at Oceanside Middle School, and at Oceanside High School. So currently, 3 of our 6 schools do not have district-provided after-school programming. some of the schools, I know TGS in the past has partnered with the YMCA with varying degrees of success, sometimes from staffing, sometimes from interest from our students. So we wanted to reach out to families to find out if we were able to use ESSER funding in order to provide supports for students, and this is part of that. Pete, did you say it's 1.8 million? 2 million?
1.2.
1.2 million. 1.2 million from ESSER 3 that's required to be spent specifically on supports for students. After-school programming is one of the ways that need can be met, as well as summer school programming. So this is one of our ideas of how we would like to spend that funding. And part of why we're bringing it before the board tonight is because this was not on the list that we presented to you back in April when we were sharing projects of how to use ESSER funding, because the presentation that we showed you was all 3 ESSER grant funds. The total would be totally spent with all of those projects, but we had quite a long list, as you remember, of one-year positions in order to provide spacing. We have not needed to fill those one-year positions because we are 99.9% confident that we will be back without needing those distancing requirements within the classroom. So this is a plan for using some of the funding, and you probably also got a chart that showed the framework of what the expansion estimated cost would be as well. So I'll go over that as well in just a moment and address any questions that you might have. So we've, of course, first needed to know, is there a need? Would families be interested in this? So we received 137 responses. 110 separate families showed interest. Families of 81 Ashpoint community students are interested. That number is huge. I expected numbers similar to what we saw for summer programming, which my estimate for summer programming was around 40 for Ashpoint, 40 for Thomaston Grammar School, and 40 to 50, and 25 for Cushing Community School. So the Ashpoint number sort of blew me away. Families of 17 Cushing Community School students are interested, and families of 49 Thomaston Grammar School students are interested.
Stephanie, can you just remind me the numbers of total students in those schools? Because I always forget.
Ashpoint is around 180. It's varied it's growing. It's usually between 180 to 190. Thomaston Grammar is right around that same point. They're sort of neck and neck with their numbers. It used to be that Ashpoint was our second smallest school, but it's really not anymore. It's closer in numbers to Thomaston Grammar School. Cushing Community School, I think the last time I looked was 68, near 70 students.
Thanks.
So based on data from the survey, we were considering a Monday through Friday program because these are the responses that we received, with most families indicating that they would really have a lot of appreciation for a program that could be consistent Monday through Friday. So that's what the model, the framework that was shared with you, that's what that represents. So the cost, and as we were trying to figure out what we would need in order to run this financially and just for an initial startup framework, the plan is Monday through Friday. Also, based on the data from the survey, we're considering a 3 o'clock to 5:15 program. So hours for staff would be 3 o'clock until 5:30, just for time to sort of close the program, make sure everybody gets picked up. And that was also based on data that we received from families that indicated that there was the highest percentage need for that. I've got a note here that says, unlike 21st century programming, we are not looking at providing transportation. 99.1% of the respondents said that they can transport. One family of one student said that transportation would be an issue. So the goal would be to not have to involve transportation. We know that does add to the cost as well. It would not be as much of a need for the programming that would be provided at these 3 schools, but we would continue to offer transportation through the 21st century programming. Nothing in this plan changes what we're currently doing through 21st century grant funding. We've not finalized a fee plan, but I'm sharing this part just because we did reach out to families to ask. We're trying to come up with a plan that would be sustainable into the future. We have a lot of flexibility right now with ESSER funding, and it's great to use and spend that money on great programming for students, but we really want to be mindful that we're developing a plan that's going to be sustainable after the grant funding disappears. So we want to make sure that we're hearing from families if there might be the possibility to pay in the future. That just reminds me really quickly, just a super quick little story. I spoke to a parent in the summer, and they had gone out of the country. So I said, well, unfortunately, you have to quarantine for 7 days. And the mom said, oh, well, that's all right. I don't think I paid too much for your program. I said, no, our program in the summer was free. Oh, good. She said, well, I would have paid for it. And we did hear that from some families during summer school as well, that parents would be willing to pay, even though we offered it for free. So we just want to make sure that we're aware of what opportunities might be out there in order to continue to build and grow the program. So that's the data. We have made no decisions around what that would look like for fees at this point, so that we're not voting on the fees tonight. I just wanted to share that information with you. You would just be voting on the concept and the framework. I've also included, of course, because you know I like the comments, I'm not going to read through all of these, but we asked families to share any other thoughts or comments about after-school programming. You can just see that there is a definite need. There are child carers that used to offer after-school programming that are no longer offering it because they do not have the workers to be able to offer it. We might see a similar situation, I'm hoping not, where we have the concept and the framework, but it's a struggle to get the staff in order to run the program. I'm hopeful that that's not an issue, because I had that same thought in the summer, like who's going to want to work in the summer after a COVID year, and we had an incredible turnout. So I'm hopeful that teachers and even other people from the community that are looking for ways to spend time with students and have their fingerprinting and really want to get in there and find ways to support the community will take advantage of this. So that's really all that I have to share on the screen. Actually, I can also pull up. I do have the same framework that you probably also have in front of you as well. This was sent out earlier this week just so that you could review it. The after-school programming vision is the same vision that we had for the summer programming that we found to be so successful. So RSU 13 strives to provide students with a safe and enriching learning environment where they can take advantage of engaging, hands-on, and real-life learning opportunities while continuing to build meaningful relationships with their peers. We saw that from the survey data, and caring adults within their school beyond the regular school day. RSU 13 understands the need in our communities that in order to ensure adults can return to work and children have safe and enriching experiences between the time school ends and the time that parents and caregivers can be present due to work obligations, we need to offer programming to fill the need during the gap. And RSU 13's district goals align with the vision outlined above. And while programming will be focused on relationships proficiencies, particularly in the 4C skills outlined below in this phrasing here, and pathways, it will also help our students develop connections to the community and aid in fostering RSU 13's relationships with businesses and organizations. Lauren, going back to that big push with pathways, starting young, and want to support and partner with our schools so that we can continue to develop a rich and meaningful learning experience for our students. We saw a ton of success with that this summer. So many businesses and organizations that want to partner with our school. I feel like we barely even tapped into what we could do. So I'm really hopeful, of course, that you approve this tonight so that we can develop this even further. The skill focus would be on the 4 C's, which for our district are those soft skills: communication and collaboration, creativity and problem solving, citizenship and community building, and critical thinking skills. And certainly our very skilled program coordinators and teachers would also try to emphasize math and literacy skills and build those in. I saw lots of opportunities when they did that this summer. And they built in a ton of science as well. Carol?
I noticed one of the parent comments was a question about early release days. What would that look like?
So currently, this plan does not include early release days. Our 21st Century Plan does not either. It may depend on staffing, but if most of our staff that run the after-school program are teachers, our early release days are for teachers. So it would be a real struggle to try to provide that. But I can appreciate that parent's comment because I have a 6- and 8-year-old, and we're in a bind on those days too. But this plan as written is not inclusive of that. That would be if we have an opportunity to expand it because we don't have teachers in those positions.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Dave?
My question is, you're going to be providing extra education to the kids that come to these programs, right?
Yes.
So the kids that don't come to the programs are going to not get that education?
So it's enrichment, it's optional, it's in addition.
Again, the question is, the kids that don't come to the programs are not going to be provided the same education levels that the kids that do come to the programs, correct? Is that
Yeah,
true?
that's true, but... So, yeah, the answer to the question is yes.
Okay.
And it's, obviously, if they want to experience that, they would attend the program, so. It's obviously a supplement.
Okay, and, okay. There is a line here for supervisor of $70,000. Who is supervising or running the other 3 programs currently?
We have a 21st Century Grant Coordinator who currently runs the program and oversees the 21st Century grant funding and all of the summer programming for 21st Century.
Okay, and I take it that position is is the person doing this going to be doing all of them or just these 3 schools?
These 3 schools with the hope that if our 21st Century funding runs out at some point, we're able to continue to expand that position over time.
So the idea is to move this into the...
Correct.
And,
yes.
And the third question is the numbers that you got here are somewhat different than the numbers you guessed. Does that affect the number? How's that going to affect your ability to handle the program?
So that's a great question because in the framework, I was estimating 45 students for Ash Point. That will really depend on the number of staff that we're able to get. If we can add in some additional staff to support that number, it would increase the total cost of this slightly, not significantly. I would argue increasing this cost slightly in order to accommodate more families would be great. But I'm not confident that we would be able to get the staff, so it might be a registration process of first come, first serve for those slots.
Okay. And at this moment, you were asking for $250,000, but you were guessing it was going to be $150,000, I think. You said you estimated $100,000 in funding from parents.
So yes, that's if we make a determination to charge parents. Another discussion that we had is that we could potentially, as we're building this, waive that fee for the first year as we build out the program. The fee from parents is really more of a sustainability feature so that we could continue to offer this in the future.
Thank you.
So just to further qualify that, the whole idea here is that the program would not impact the local budget, but it would eventually become a self-funding program.
Okay.
Would we have fee waivers at that point?
I'm sorry?
Would we have fee waivers at that point?
Possibly.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. So like Dave, I was actually curious about the district cost because we already have a coordinator for the 21st Century. So I was wondering why double that position up?
We can't, the 21st Century coordinator can only focus on the 21st Century grant.
Okay.
No other program.
No
so they couldn't supervise another school's program. That's the only reason.
And we can't expand the grant to cover any of these, even if we fund it separately?
Nope.
We would have to apply for a 21st Century Grant expansion, but that application usually comes out in February, so we would be waiting another year to do that.
Okay. The other question, or sort of big question that I had was, I'm perfectly fine approving this for using the ESSER funds. I don't like coupling it as a future plan because I think that has budgetary implications that we really should be walking through very carefully, particularly because it looks like unless we get the 21st Century Grant renewed, we have some additional costs. So I think we do need to be looking at that separately. So I'm happy to approve this so long as we sort of separate those out very clearly. Okay, that's fine. I think that was all I had to say. I will just say that I am not comfortable with charging people if we don't have a robust fee waiver. I know we're not at that discussion, but that's just kind of my feeling, is that we do need to make sure that we are protecting students who would not be able to participate if they couldn't afford it. And there is, I mean, we do have some people who are in that category. So.
Absolutely.
That also reminds me, what are we going to do with the one student who wants to participate but can't get there? Carpooling I know may be an option, but are we going to make sure that student participates?
There are no names with the survey, so I don't know,
you don't know.
who that student was. Certainly that's something that the family could try to make arrangements with the school. The one thing that I do want to say, I was pleased that most families are, 99.1% is a great number. Most families are able to transport their child because that tends to be around the time that work is getting out. 21st Century Grant funding is quite a bit more stringent. It requires that the program ends at 6, would not give the flexibility to end any earlier than that. It also requires that the district provides transportation, which does add to the cost as well. It does provide that equity piece, but sometimes that equity piece isn't always necessary, and there are other alternative ways that we could work out a plan for families.
So long as it's clear that we're going to work out something, that's fine with me. So.
Tom?
So a couple of things. One, you had said that we're seeing this because this was not on the list that was provided last spring. So what's the trade-off here? If we're doing this, what's going away from the list that was provided?
1-year positions in order to expand spacing at the middle and high school.
Okay.
So there was
because we didn't need the COVID spacing.
You got
piece.
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I would just kind of piggyback on what Carol said. I have been concerned about the increase in the number of workshop days. Obviously it's beneficial to the staff, but I think it is going to create an additional hardship for families. So, I know that you're still thinking about that, but I would just say that anything that we can do to try to find a way to provide support for families on workshop days would be pretty important in my view. So.
One other thing that I'll add to this is, of course, this is a separate agenda item about the job description of this coordinator, but I would love to see, and families wrote this comment as well, I would love to see some partnership with the high school, just like what Sarah Rogers was starting to do with 21st Century and pulling in students. Great way to get community service for students, great way to get them some experience if they're interested in education or childcare. So there might be some ways to leverage that. I don't know how quickly we would be able to get things like that up and running. We would want to find some ways to train those students before we just start bringing them in.
Sure.
But
and younger kids love older kids.
They mentor, big
I love
big
that.
brother, big
That's
sister,
great.
yeah. So
Actually, I was also talking to someone who probably early 20s and said that was a group in this area that really wants to get involved as well. I don't know how we connect with people that age, but there's an opportunity there.
Awesome.
I want to say that, for parents who need that kind of care after school, just unbelievably helpful to have that, just crazy good. And then, for kids who just have not much to go home to, it's great that we have them in our district in a caring environment longer and with food and structure. It's just great. So it's a win-win, if not more wins than that. Anything else?
Now, are we voting on this tonight?
Yes, we are.
No,
The motion's on the table.
Could I just say
Yes,
one quick
yes.
thing? I think this is probably a conversation to be continued, but I really like how you've positioned this as community engagement and connecting to local businesses and things like that. So I think that's a really nice part of the program. I'd be curious to learn more about how you envision that, like if these community partners are coming into the schools, or if somehow you're getting the students out, because then there would be transportation costs. And I guess the other thing that I was just sort of playing with in my mind is in terms of sustainability of some students not being able to afford the program or needing things like transportation. Could local businesses sort of like sponsor a student over time? This may be something you've already thought of, but it'd be a good, I think, at some point to have that conversation.
Absolutely.
We've actually talked about things very similar to that. So
Yeah, great.
you're thinking along the same lines as we are.
Cool.
And I think ordinary citizens would like to fund it also.
Good.
Sponsor a student.
Good. Yeah, great. Yes.
Are we limiting, if we approve this, are we limiting the amount of money that's to be spent at $250,000, or are we giving it some sort of open book so that when the costs come in, you make the adjustments? Because you're making guesses at how much money you're going to spend.
Mm-hmm.
Are you limited at the $250,000, or can you spend more?
Well, I'm hopeful that it's approval of the concept, not just of the exact number value.
So the dollar amount would be approved later?
I'm not sure how the board typically handles that. Not as clear.
So what I would say is tonight, if you approve the concept and approved up to $250,000 for that, then if we found that we had reached some kind of a point where we had to request more money, I think we could do that. I mean, I can understand why the board might be hesitant to say, go ahead and spend whatever you want. I don't agree with that, so I think that would be fine. We'll work with it.
Okay. Do we have to amend?
No.
Okay.
You don't.
And again, it's from federal funding, you know that, right?
Federal funding this year. Funding next year is...
Well, they did say that this would just be federal.
We recognize this does not continue into the local budget unless it's so ordered by the board.
And we have 3 years of federal funding.
I was going to say, we have years of it. Yeah, just one.
Just a comment on that. We seem to have a lot of things that are getting federal funding right now.
Yeah.
No, the plan that we've always talked about is make sure it's sustainable and to make sure that we use this grant money as wisely as possible. We don't want to have a fiscal cliff when the grant money runs out. We don't want to be stuck with a program that we can't afford, and especially a great program like this that we just...
I think overall it's a great program.
Yeah, so I think that...
Anything else? Seeing none, all those in favor? It is a unanimous vote.
I think it's unanimous, yep, thank you.
F, to approve the after-school program coordinator position. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Dave, and seconded by Chelsea. A description of this, please.
Question?
Wait for maybe a description, okay?
Oh, I was going to ask, just the last line on your description, is there a typo?
It's possible. I've been pumping out the work like crazy. After school and summer programming.
My apologies. I said, is there a typo? Because I'm not sure.
Supervisors.
You mean that L?
See, that thing.
Yeah,
Yes, there should not be an additional, I can't tell if it's an exclamation point on my computer or an L, but yes, that should not be there. My apologies. So just really brief discussion. This person ultimately reports to superintendent of schools, would be responsible for supervising the after-school and summer programming, more specifically to these 3 schools, because Sarah Rogers will continue to do the 21st Century after-school coordination for the 21st Century grant. and supervise the faculty and staff at those 3 schools that are running after-school programming. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to read the job description. I will not read through the whole job description, but just a few key highlights of this job would include building out the model, continuing to work with John, Pete, and me in order to develop sustainability for this model so that it can be something that we can continue to offer over the years without a budgetary impact. Community relations so that we can continue to build opportunities for students to work with businesses and organizations. Certainly develop what the after-school programming would look like and ensure that it's engaging and have a close relationship with families in order to get feedback and continue to improve the program. I think those are among the key highlights, but certainly if you have any questions, let me know.
Okay. Yes, Chelsea.
I want to say I like that you've focused more on abilities than qualifications, because I think that will increase the quality of the applicants you get. I was wondering why we don't put salary information in our job descriptions.
It's a good question. I don't
have an answer for that.
Okay. I will just say that I definitely have been hearing a lot of people talk about just the role of equity and including salary contracts, salary information, and also that I've heard from some people who don't apply for jobs if they don't see the salary information. So I think it's something that we should strongly consider including.
Okay.
When we get questions from potential employees, we give them a range, because they're all, especially non-aligned contracts, are all negotiated individually. But for the teachers or any of the support staff, we can give them we give them the exact step range and qualifications and track. So it's very few people that would actually not be under the contract.
Well, having a range, I think, is fine.
We do get that.
And it's also important, I think, in a state where we are paying more money than a lot of other people, because then people don't have to guess or do that extra work, and it saves staff time as well. So.
Anything else?
So it's this part of the $250,000 we were just talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Is this person now going to run the summer program?
Yes.
Is that something you were doing before?
Yes.
My impression is assistant superintendents tend to have far more on their plate than they need.
It was a very busy spring and summer. It was wonderful, though.
Anyone say that?
That's right.
We're best friends.
I agree with you 100%.
By the way, if I'd read that through in my brain, I would have been less I would have less criticism about the need for the supervisor.
Yeah, understood.
Broad portfolios.
Yep. Yep.
Anything else? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous vote. Thank you. G2, this does not require a motion, to appoint school board members as the RSU 13 representative and alternate representative to the Maine School Boards Association Delegate Assembly, which is scheduled virtually for 9:30 a.m. on Saturday, October 23, 2021. Any, Carol? I have a form here, don't I? Do y'all have that form or just me?
You have it, I do not.
Okay, so yeah. So Carol, representative, okay. Anybody would like to be alternate? Just jump in there. I will be the alternate then. Yep. So we'll take care of that. Thank you, Carol. Everybody, thank you, Carol. Yeah.
Do you want to read a vote into the minutes, or you don't really need it?
I don't think we need it.
Okay.
We just need to do this form, right?
Yeah, we do need the form.
You
I'm cool
should
with
put that in the minutes, don't you?
That'll be in the minutes, yeah.
And Lauren, will we have an opportunity in the September meeting to know what Carol will have to be voting on? Because in that meeting, they're voting on amendments or something. I did it one year, and I was like, oh my word, we never talked about this, and I had to make decisions for the board. So are we going to have those so that we can give Carol some advice?
If they provide them to us.
They do send them to the superintendent, I believe.
Okay.
So
Do you think they come in before?
I can forward it to the board. Yeah, I thought they sent them to the board too, but.
no, we don't get them.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I will
So
send
when
them.
you get them, you can forward them, whatever that is.
I'll do that.
Okay. All right. H, to undertake a first reading of RSU 13 draft policy BED, remote participation in school board meetings. Mark, would you like to make the motion?
I'd like a motion to submit the RSU 13 draft policy BED, remote participation in school board meetings, to the board for first reading.
Second? Carol. If you guys don't know, Mark's the chair of that committee, just in case you didn't know that. Okay, discussion of this.
Okay, well, a policy put forth for, we of course went the past year due to COVID doing remote meetings. We're back meeting in person now, but due to extenuating circumstances, a spike or states of emergency being called by the state. Not to mention, we were discussing this last night with the policy committee. We, situations such as weather, when the school district may be closed, can we still meet remotely? And so we put this policy together to, and hopefully folks had a chance to read this. I barely did myself. But anyway, so that's the gist of it. One thing we did discuss last night also was who will decide if someone can attend and why, and if someone's traveling, for instance. And I think we decided that the board chair, in this case, of course, Lauren, would decide whether that was a legitimate reason why they weren't able to be present, and if they could possibly Zoom in. Any other further questions or discussion?
I have a question. I haven't had a chance to read it. I apologize.
It's all right. No.
Do you cover executive sessions in here?
I don't think we did we?
Executive sessions are covered under the statute. So this came about from a new statute that just was signed by the governor in June to allow this type of meetings, and executive sessions are allowed remotely. It just really, says to take great care to make sure that those sessions are kept private.
Yeah, it's unclear whether you can keep a Zoom meeting, like executive session, private.
Yeah, you can.
We did throughout
Yes.
this year.
We have.
Usually the breakout rooms are the way to guarantee the privacy. So you basically send every board member to a breakout room, separate from the meeting, which keeps it separate from the online meeting.
But if we're all here and Dave is in New York and we have to go executive session.
Then I leave. I just leave. As long as you have a quorum, not a bill.
Yeah, I mean, it's the tech that we're going to have to work this out, because you shouldn't have to, you should be able to participate if anyone was not here physically and Zooming in, but.
Well, we could take your laptop in there, put them at the head of the table.
It's true, right, yeah.
It's what's happening where I am at. Kids are floating around, wife floating
Yep.
around.
Right.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
everybody has a room that they can go to.
Right, you'd have to be, yeah, that's true.
No,
Good point.
I don't have kids. I don't have any kids at home. My dog would be the worst thing. My wife or my dog, and my
Yeah.
wife will leave.
Okay.
But
I mean, we dealt with all that last year during COVID. We all had to make sure that we were in a private room to do our Zoom executive session. So, but you're right. We just bring in a laptop and someone can. We can do it that way. So, anyway, yes, Mark.
I think one other thing we discussed last night as well is a what if. I'm not sure if we came to a conclusion on this or not. But if you were suddenly traveling, we had to call an emergency board meeting.
Yeah.
And you were unavailable to be here in person, but could Zoom in. Did we decide for sure that the vice?
Yeah.
Okay.
Vice chair will run it, and I'll
That should,
participate.
yeah.
It doesn't say that in here, but that was the
Yeah.
process we discussed.
Yeah, so someone who could read the room, I mean, you could certainly vote and
Yeah.
be present via Zoom, but
Yeah. Yep.
running the meeting would be the vice chair.
Yep. So,
Yeah.
I know that I would like to adopt this tonight because it just gives us the ability to be remote if we need to be. Because we did it before because the governor's emergency order said you can do this. We adopt this policy tonight, then we can do it in 2 weeks if something happened and we have to, right? So I would love to be able to adopt this tonight.
Wait, doesn't it have to go through second reading?
So what's the procedure on?
You can just adopt, you can adopt it at first reading, you can adopt first reading and go to second reading for full adoption. It's up to the board.
So we can't, yeah.
Then I definitely have a comment then.
Okay.
When you're done.
I'm done.
You're done. Okay. So my concern with the policy as written is the public participation. And that is something that I definitely think we need to provide more robust options for public participation in online meetings. And the city of Rockland was able to do it really effectively. And I think they not only got a ton of participation, but I had this great moment when somebody came up to vote in the June election, and he said, I went to a city council meeting online, and it was so much fun. How do I get involved? And so I think it's really something that engages the community if it's provided. And so I would really, if we're going to adopt this, I'd like, tonight, I'd like to make a motion to, well, now I'm going to have to think about it. I'm essentially going to make a motion to take out the submitting written comments because I would like to increase the ability of the public to participate.
Chelsea, I could not hear that.
I'm sorry.
Could you really yell?
I basically said that, is this better?
Yeah, but I can read your lips too if you put your mic down and just talk loud.
Is this better?
Yes.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is increase the ability of the public to participate in the Zoom meeting instead of just having it by the public comment beforehand, so like where they can actually be in the meetings. So if we're going to adopt this tonight, I think I can accomplish that by striking something, but I need to read the paragraph first. So somebody else, if you want to talk while I read the paragraph,
Yeah,
and then
of
we'll
course,
see.
we can also amend policies anytime we want, right? So if you don't know what you want to do tonight, we can do that next time.
I can figure it out in a minute.
So the policy was written with the statute to create the absolute minimum of a procedure that just coordinates, likens it to what we do normally. It doesn't mean the procedures that we actually use, which are administrative, is at a much higher level. So it just means that we have to offer at least the written comment. We've got to offer at least that. So I think that striking that would defeat what the statute says we have to offer.
The other thing too is the last line is, we can't do this for a school budget meeting, for the community. Just keep that in mind. We cannot do this.
And you can't just do it because you want to do it.
Yeah, we have to have a.
There's got to be a compelling reason for a remote meeting.
Right.
Or remote participation.
So what I don't understand is why we can't make a stricter standard than the state standard. Because if we removed the submitting written comments phrase, then the public would still be provided opportunity to participate. It would just be at a stricter standard than the state.
But not written.
They could still certainly provide written comment. What it says is that we are not using that as a substitute for other forms of participation.
If I'm understanding, it sounds like what you're looking for is both written comments and an opportunity for people to participate, like on video via Zoom,
Yes.
in the conversation,
Right.
which I support.
Is that what the city did?
Yeah, that's what the city did, and it's for the new members. It's not what we did in the previous year.
So maybe I'm looking at a different spot, but toward the bottom of the first page, I'm seeing all of those things listed as examples. So you're looking somewhere else?
I think our page is printed out differently. Are you looking at the
examples in parentheses?
Right, so those are the examples. So basically what that means is that we could provide proper, according to this policy, we could provide proper participation through written comments instead of allowing people to come to the video. So what I want to do is take that possibility out.
It does say raising hand on Zoom.
Right, I don't have a problem with that, because both of these require people to be in the Zoom.
Right.
This means we don't have to require people to be in the Zoom. Lauren, do you really want to pass this tonight?
Yep.
Okay. All right, well, in that case, David, go ahead.
Can we approve it tonight provisionally and allow for a rereading next meeting?
So the board can approve the policy at first reading and then ask that the policy be reviewed at the next policy committee meeting and offer amendments. So that's normal practice, so
Okay.
yes.
So if we had do it, I'm uncomfortable approving it tonight because it's but with that provision in there, I would be glad to.
Approving it tonight in the form presented does not prevent the board from offering amendments to the policy.
And on the second reading, we can then
Correct.
make the changes.
That is correct.
Is that
Okay, yes, if we're going to have this back on the agenda in September, so that we, then yes, that'll be fine. And Mark, I'm happy to, if you need any clarifications, I'm happy to provide them.
But it means we can do it
We
now.
can't do it remotely
Correct.
until you
Because like,
pass this.
the one thing we want to keep in mind, this is what I'm thinking, is if, you know the CDC guidelines, if the cases go above a certain number,
Yes.
you have to wear a mask at Hannaford? It's basically the rule, right? And so we get to some point soon where we have to wear masks here, or we just have to go remote. I just want to be ready
Yeah,
at any second, that's all. So
that's fine.
I like the idea we do it now, we can utilize it if we need to, and then we can make, second reading, we can make those changes.
So,
Yes?
That's what,
so is it true that if we do not pass this finally tonight, that if we needed to meet remotely in September, we would not be authorized to do so? Is that true?
If you pass this at first reading tonight, you would be able to hold a remote meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we don't need to pass it finally, we could just do first reading tonight?
Pass it at first reading, but again, the board is always welcome to offer amendments to an existing policy in future.
But please email those to Mark, if you have ideas, right? Email to Mark.
But if worst case scenario, if conditions were such that we had to meet remotely in September, we would be able to do that if we pass this in first reading tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
Good question, and yes.
If it's, but we,
What?
if it's passed at first reading, or if it just goes to first reading and then has to come back for second reading? If it has to come back for second reading, are we?
Now, let me try to be totally clear about this. If the policy is to be used, it should be adopted at first reading. But that does not mean that the board can't come back and add amendments. So you could, next month, you could say, we'd like to amend this policy. It doesn't all have to be done tonight, that's what I'm saying, but it should be passed and adopted at first reading in order to use the policy. But then you can come back to it and amend the policy.
Is it up for second reading next month automatically if we pass it now in first reading?
Only if you want it to be.
Right, so that's the answer to your question, I think, and what you're
So
addressing.
you're passing the policy.
We're passing
Or
it
you're basically, you're in effect bypassing first reading, going right to second reading, becomes policy, and then can come back again, edited,
Yes.
amended as a first read.
Yes, right, that's a good clarification, yes.
Right.
So do we have to withdraw the motion?
No.
Because it was submitted for first reading.
I think this is a great question when we do our orientation to go over in more detail, because I am thoroughly confused.
So the board has the ability to bypass the first reading and go right to second reading.
Well, wouldn't we need a motion to do that?
I think that would be,
Okay,
that'd be more appropriate motion, I think, to just be more clear. I think it would have cleared up this earlier.
Okay. So you made the motion, right?
yes.
And so do you want to withdraw your motion?
I'll
or
withdraw my motion, and we're going straight to second reading? No.
Whatever the right language is, that's what we're doing.
Move to adopt the policy.
That's it.
Move to adopt the policy at first reading would do
Okay.
it.
So I'm going to withdraw my original motion. I'd like to resubmit this to go to straight to second reading. No? Wait.
Move to adopt the motion or at first reading.
Right, so in effect, what you're saying is that we're not going to have a second reading. We're
Okay.
going to adopt it tonight on the first reading of the policy.
Okay, so I withdraw my original motion. I move that we adopt this tonight with provision that we will undertake this next month for.
No.
Well,
You're
so-
going to move to go directly to second reading tonight.
No.
You don't have.
No.
That's what I'm saying.
Move to adopt in first reading, period.
Period.
And I think we're going to.
First reading, period.
Yep.
Right, we don't need the verbiage, because we can do that.
Okay.
And this is true for the next three, right?
Next two.
Yes.
Next
well,
two.
Right.
Okay. The
Now,
next
wait a
two.
minute, wait a minute.
On the agenda,
Get through
items
this one
2 and
first.
3.
For reasons
Get through
we'll.
this one first.
Yep.
It's good.
No, but
Okay.
you have to pull it out because they're linked.
Nope.
No.
No.
Yeah.
H1, move to adopt in
Okay,
first reading.
there we
That's a
go.
motion on the floor. Who's seconding?
I don't.
Dave? Okay. Any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous vote. Okay, H2, RSU 13 revised policy DJ, bidding, purchasing requirements.
Okay, I make a motion, we submit RSU 13 revised policy DJ bidding/purchasing requirements to be passed for first reading, submitted for first reading to the board.
I think it's
To
adopted,
be adopted at first reading.
Be adopted at first
just like the
reading.
one we
Okay.
just did.
And the same idea goes, well, go ahead and finish that. Finish your motion in second.
Oh, Question is, do we need to adopt it? The other one had a reason for being adopted.
Okay, wait.
And we're getting there.
You just going to second?
It's all second. So
Okay, so it's seconded, now we can discuss it.
Okay.
Okay. So we had an emergency meeting was called yesterday for the policy committee. Pete was notified by Drummond Wilson that with all the COVID money coming in and all the federal funding coming in, that our policy regarding bidding and purchasing was no longer compliant with federal regulations. So what Pete wanted to do, rather than throw the whole thing out, he mentioned this earlier, I think in the meeting, what he wanted to do was just take our current policy, he had Drummond Wilson do this and adopt it to federal regulations. So that's what you're seeing in the red. Is that correct, Pete? That's
Yeah, so we asked Governor Woodson, because of the changes in the uniform grant guidance and the federal procurement guidelines, our policy was out of date and would make it, in my thinking, fairly difficult to use some of this federal money for some of the contracts that we are anticipating, especially when it comes to the federal, using the modulars. So I, like every other district in the state, asked Drummond Woodson to review their policy DJ and make sure it was fully compliant with all of the federal and state regulations. Nothing more, nothing less, no change in intent, no change in, this policy just outlines the way we need to solicit bids to make sure that the district gets the most competitive pricing for all of our purchases. The additions are recognizing the main guidelines, it's recognizing the federal guidelines in Part 1. In Part 2, which is the carryover from the prior policy that was in effect, which is our local non-grant policy, it didn't change any of that. Even the very, very low limits that require us certain procedures to buy things in excess of $10,000. And it didn't change the notification procedures and the board involvement in local procedures. And to Doug's point, what is missing is a possible area where, I guess it answers the question, where does the board want to get involved in this? So when does the board want to be notified or actually approve a contract? At the local level, at the non-federally funded, non-main funded, it's over $50,000. And right now, there is no recognition of any amount in the federal and state. I think it could be easily added to add a number to that. Just keeping in mind that with the amount of money and contracts that we'll be going through in the next couple of years, or next year in particular, it's going to mean a lot of board meetings. It's going to be a lot of meetings to get each one of these contracts approved. So I think that it certainly makes sense that, to have maybe a level that the superintendent can approve, maybe a level that the finance committee can be notified and approve, and maybe a level that the board must approve. I think that's what some districts have done around us. Some have no limits at all, and the superintendent does it all. But I think that was I think Doug's point was a fair point, and because it is in the other part of the policy, it might make sense to add something to this to make sure. It doesn't change the way we have to process and procure, but it does change the way we make the award, which I think is totally appropriate, depending on the amount. And then that's really up to the board to discuss where those levels would be.
Roman Wilson and therefore Pete also felt it was important to have this in place immediately because their concern also is in case of an audit, we're left vulnerable if this policy isn't in place. But kind of like what we just said with the last policy, that we would undertake this at the next policy committee meeting and have an attorney from Drummond Wilson present so we can go over some of these particulars and some of the mechanics, some of the numbers, find out when the board wants to get involved and when we don't need to be involved. So we want to hammer out the details, but Pete felt strongly that we should have this in place immediately, which is why we're asking to adopt it tonight.
It's one of those things that we have to have in place. I'm not comfortable even reaching out to architectural engineering firms to get the modular project going without having at least the policy board approved, and whether it goes right back to policy committee and updated, because I think that what came up last night, even the old portion of the policy was confusing to some of us. I think there is a brand new policy that was just written by the attorney that I'm working with that MSMA has adopted as their sample policy, so we're happy to either start with that, but the same individual that wrote all these policies will be happy to meet at the policy committee and go through this and kind of explain to all of us, the best practice going forward with this. But for now, again, this is really just written to not change our policy, not change the intent, just make us compliant. It was a negative on our last audit that was just done because even though the grant guidance was changed in November, we got notification in February. I contacted Drummond Wilson in early March. Because of the backlog, we just got this back recently, so that's why it turned into an emergency. I don't know where the summer went.
They've been busy too.
Yeah.
Just to go into the next one real quick. The next one is Code of Conduct, and the only changes in the Code of Conduct one was adding board members to the Code of Conduct, which is a federal requirement, and that's what that language is. The strikeout at the end is just some duplication that was in another policy.
This is the one.
DGH you're talking about?
DGH is just, that was the one that just goes through the Code of Conduct in terms of procurement and just includes basically board members and not just employees.
Okay.
I don't have.
Oh. Never mind. Sorry, Kiara.
Sorry. Well, you can. I have that. Never mind. I just bring it.
All right. So we are on DG.
Oh, that was
DJ.
Yeah.
Yes, Tom.
So I think that it's important to note that this, we had this policy DJ, which is represented by the language in black, and so this is an update to that. When we talked about last night, I'm not, clearly I haven't looked at this policy in quite some time, and I'm a little troubled by some of the original language in here, but I think, from my view, I think what we have to do is to get something in place tonight that so this really updates that from where we were with our policy to come into compliance. But I also would very much want to see the policy committee revisit this at our next meeting and also look at the new draft policy. So I don't think this is perfect, but I think we're in a position where we need to do something tonight, and also be committed to revisiting it and hopefully coming back at the next meeting with something different. So.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Dave.
I am really confused here. You're saying you're going to get your lawyer involved after we approve the policy?
No, the lawyer was involved with this policy, but we're going to bring...
Get him involved and rewrite the policy?
In rewriting the policy, because the intent was not to change the policy. The intent was just to make it compliant with federal law. So what came up in last night's policy meeting was maybe there might be an opportunity to actually revise the policy and make it better, because it's a hybrid policy that came from a couple of school districts, and I think was just kind of put together. And as we were trying to read through parts of the process, it didn't quite make sense. Part of it was policy, part of it was procedure, and I think we just need to get back to a policy. And I think that's what was confusing. And so, in terms of revising a policy, yes, we're going to get the attorney involved in helping us draft a new policy if that's what the board wants. Only on the local piece, only on the non-federal state piece of that part two.
We have a meeting in 2 weeks, you said?
It is a workshop, and at the workshop, we discuss things. We don't typically have a business meeting.
Can we have a brief business meeting to approve a policy at that meeting?
We would much rather create safety in adopting this tonight in terms of us, taxpayers, everybody. And then the policy committee will meet the fourth Wednesday of the month to review it again with the attorney present. Is that right?
Correct.
Right? And so then we'd come back in September. So we feel that's the better way to go than putting this off at all beyond tonight. It's a protection, clearly.
I understand that, but may I?
Yeah.
Okay. You have a policy in place that says you have to have 2 readings, okay? I understood the first reading. You needed to have a method because you might not be able to have a meeting to deal with the next, okay? But now you have 3 separate policies and you want all of them approved tonight?
Yep.
We have two separate policies.
But there's 3 separate policies.
One was removed one was removed earlier on in the meeting.
No, he meant the.
I see what you're saying. Gotcha.
So you're having a situation here where you want to suspend the second reading on all policies tonight?
On these 3, yes.
I have a problem with that.
Okay, that's fine. It's absolutely fine. Yep. Other questions, thoughts, or concerns? All right, seeing none. Everybody clear on what they're voting on? Adoption of first reading? In favor? And against? So Dave? Okay, thank you. All right. Next is RSU 13 draft policy DJ-R administrative procedure.
H. R has been removed.
Oh, sorry.
DJH.
Yeah, DJH, yep. Go ahead, Mark. Yep.
So, okay, I'm sorry. I'd like to propose the RSU 13 revised policy DJH, purchasing and contracting, procurement, staff code of conduct for approval by the board at tonight's reading.
Okay. Second? Carol? Okay. Discussion? Okay. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor?
This is for approval tonight?
Yes, just like, yeah. Okay, and then against? Dave, okay? Thank you. Thank you all. Okay. So there we go. On to communications, number 8.
None.
None. Nope. Committee reports, curriculum and technology. Susan.
We have not met. We are meeting the 16th, and it's going to be a lot of interesting information. certainly invite any and all of you to attend.
Okay, 3:30?
Yes,
Are you meeting in person
as far as I know.
here?
Zoom? Are we zooming?
I don't know. I would imagine we'd meet in person, or did you want to Zoom?
I prefer person.
Well,
I prefer Zoom.
yeah, I prefer Zoom too.
Oh, for
It's-
the Monday meeting? Yeah, I do, yes.
It's really
You said Zoom.
saves
I missed that.
travel time and stuff, but,
Another benefit of Zoom is that it's recorded.
yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So,
And they can see it later. 'Cause it'll
yeah, I
be
want
on
to appoint you to this committee.
Sure.
Yep. And Dave, you want to be appointed to Finance and Facilities?
Sure.
Okay. Done. Anybody want any changes? Just let me know if you do. I mean, I love what you do, so.
Who's
just
the
let me know.
chairman of financial facilities?
Yes.
It's just starting.
Yes. I'll give a report.
Okay, we good with that? And Student Engagement Task Force, the next meeting is Monday, October 4th. We'll do program review for everybody and starting the Building Resiliency Project. And then we've got Finance and Facilities. You want to?
Yeah, so we haven't met because we're in transition. Now that we know what our committee looks like, we can have that conversation. And I'll make sure that we have a conversation about Zoom versus in person as well. So look for information on that. And we will, in the first meeting, be setting priorities for the rest of the year because we didn't do that in June. So if you have any suggestions, feel free to send them our way.
Good. When's your next meeting then?
We're going to figure that out.
We're going to figure that out, all right. There we go. Good answer. Policy and Communications, we know about that. Your next meeting is, what is the date?
August 25th.
It's my birthday, so expect a cake.
Oh, there we go.
MCST, I've got nothing to report because we didn't meet in July. And Kihata, you're going to join me at the meeting, which is the same day, the 25th. And by the way, would you like to be the one who reports on what we do? Out of the way.
I think you can.
I've always like feigned on that one, like every year, so. Okay, so workshop planning, so we're gonna meet, in 2 weeks, August 19th. We're gonna talk about, we're gonna go to executive session, talk about negotiations. If something comes up business-wise, we always leave it open and we can do something quick business-wise. But we're gonna talk about board goals for the year. Okay, so that'll be our main purpose and topic.
What
on the
time is that
19th.
meeting?
6:30?
Same here?
Can we recreate the food?
I believe we can. Well, I'm going to qualify that because we're not all back in.
I know.
So I don't know.
Okay.
I will see what I can do.
Just want to bring that back as an important part of our tradition.
We can
so.
definitely do it for September, I know that much.
Yeah, the idea is we just have some sort of like cold cut kind of like, food to share together while we explore a topic or two. That's the goal of every workshop that we have every month.
Darcy's out on the 19th.
What's that?
Darcy is out on the 19th.
Okay, bring your own bag.
Bring your lunch.
But maybe I can get Tim, maybe.
Okay, all right, thank you. So, Kihata, you want to move to adjourn? Thank you very much. Dave, you want to second that? I thank you very much. So I always do it that way every time. So thank you all for being here. 9-something. Time to go home.
I apologize for my...
I think it's because it's the first one.